How to make light to tell a story in your artwork, using lighting volumes in Blender and painting techniques to craft the emotional narrative where every beam of light and shadows adds to the story. I made this lighthouse artwork, and the main idea was this lighthouse is like a last hope. The last sun ray would fade and everything would sink into the darkness. Only this ray from the lighthouse would remain, and the rock, which would be an additional support that helps to hold in these difficult conditions in the middle of the ocean. This Lighthouse Blender model is available on my Patreon, so if you want to support me, my channel, follow the link in the description to get this 3D model, as well as watch an amazing tutorial of texturing this model in Blender, but here let's take a look at how I made this using light techniques. So basically this is Blender's sunlight. I just rotate this one to place the sun like it would be sunset. Like the sun is almost gone and this is the last seconds when we can see the sun today. I wanted to make the color of this light closer to the sunset color, but we all know that sunset is usually almost red, and this is the reason why I choose the warm yellow color for this artwork, because I wanted to use such atmospheric contrasting colors, but at the same time avoid the red colors. Also, this darkness in the distance, so it would emphasize this line of light and deep horizon, like an endless abyss of darkness. But default light works for the whole scene, and it definitely need to block this light to leave only one part, like the last ray of the sun. So I used a simple cube, subdivide this cube and delete this space. This allows me to use this gap in this cube to control where to place this light ray in the scene. I just can move only these edges and cut off the light from the whole Blender scene, except only one part with this lighthouse. Blocking light is a technique that I use a lot of in my artworks. This is simple, but this also allows me to make deep contrast to cover the foreground and other parts of the art with shadows. Also, I don't need all these parts of this cube anymore, and I can remove them and leave just that part that can drop the shadow to block the light. Essentially, I need this object just to make light rays, because I was going to use volume to make this deep atmosphere. And since I use Blender 4.3, and I hope you watched my video about new approaches to making atmosphere with new volume scatter in Blender 4.3, I thought to use this new volume scatter, but then I thought that here we don't have emission in volumes that I really need, and I also mentioned in that video. So I returned to classic principled volume shader, because emission in the volume shader is a good opportunity to set a global color for the whole art, and obviously this makes our light darker now, so I need to increase the power of the sunlight and the light inside lighthouse, that with volume fogs they still looks pretty contrasting and nice. So the light inside looks pretty good, but I thought it also would be good to make another light ray, some opposite light ray, and of course now I already have volume fog and it's good condition to make this light ray from this lighthouse. Increase the power of this light to see these light rays. It must be the last ray. The ray of hope in the darkness that will come when the sun finally passes over the horizon. The light can cut through the darkness, trying to lead the way to pull out of the darkness those who are lost. And in order to avoid that uniform darkness behind the lighthouse, I guess it would be great to add some sky. It also emphasizes such an atmosphere. So I need a new plane and place this one behind the lighthouse to cover the whole frame. I have already shown this technique in my videos, by the way, subscribe to my channel. So I need some sky image, some atmospheric sky image. And to set the sky properly, I disabled volume fog in this scene. Now we can see the sky much clearer. This image has some horizon mountains that are pretty good fit for my artwork. To make a horizon, and if I return the volume fog in the scene, it brings such atmospheric sky behind. But now it ruins a little bit my dark atmosphere, so first I've decided to flip this sky, and since this image has this nice light part, a light among clouds, this also well emphasizes the lighthouse. And second, I used RGB curves in the shadow editor to make the sky much contrasting. But using mixed color node with color blending mode, I can even change the main color of the sky, some kind of like color correction right in the blender, to match the sky with my main color gamma and make it like stormy sky. Now this dark silhouette of the lighthouse on the light part of the sky contrast with the dark surrounding atmosphere. By the way, you asked me in the comments how I made this not uniform fog in this artwork, so that's it. Background sky with small emission light and volume fog. This combination made this amazing effect when we still can see the clouds, sky, but the fog simultaneously covers these clouds to make them barely noticeable. And this is absolutely amazing technique that I love to use in my artwork. So I used the ocean modifier to make the ocean surface in Blender, but for water details and splashes I already used Krita to make the final painting and also continued emphasizing details and light. Yeah, I started testing Krita to painting instead of Photoshop, and this is also free software as Blender and also open source, and honestly I love that even more than Photoshop. It's just enough to say how many brushes we have in Krita from the box by default installation. Brushes for different needs and everything are available here. I didn't search for some brushes to paint in splashes of these waves, just use standard brushes. And look at how it's easy to make own brushes in Krita. I just found an image of birds and drop this into Krita. Select this layer, and everything that I need to make brush from this image is go to brush settings, brush tip, predefined, and here I can press stamp. That means I want to make brush stamp from this selected layer, and this one is already available as stamp for all brushes. Honestly, it seems to me that Krita is much more creative tool than Photoshop. I still experimenting and learning new tools, but it seems like that. I especially like that I could paint and at the same time switch to the erase tool and continue working with the same stamp of brush, but using the erase tool. In Photoshop I always need to search for the same stamp for erase that I used for the brush. It's much more convenient for me, just paint details. So I use brush to paint splashes from the waves, at the same time I use an erase tool to make this painting transition softer, to make it like this foam and splashes really occur from these waves. In general, all painting details are a continuation of what I created in Blender. The base is created in 3D with subsequent drawing in Krita, but all are aimed at complementing the already created atmosphere and light. To further highlight the light line, I added additional small splashes across the whole frame, so that it would feel like light is pulling out some water particles from the darkness. I would say that it's synergy of 3D and 2D graphic. I clearly understand that creating water splashes is a lot longer to do in 3D in Blender, but it's much faster and easier to draw them. And I would say this is more flexible than doing in 3D scene. For final details, I added birds using the created stem brush, and this also plays a crucial role in emphasizing the light. It must be like all these birds flying from the darkness to the last sunlight. And it's not just enough to paint these birds because they look flat and not realistic. But if I wipe off a little bit of shadow parts of these birds, it brings some volume and makes as if they're trying to fly out from the darkness to the last ray of the light. Essentially, I emphasize the direction of light. The light is on my left side, and the shadow from this source of light should be on the right side of the birds. So we can use a combination of 3D in Blender and digital painting in Krita, using light in our artwork to bring the story to our viewer, to emphasize important details, create dynamic and aesthetic picture, and immerse the viewer to the story.